Can scientists explain every archaeological discovery that's ever made? No. Do we want them to? Also, no. If everything was explained to us instantly, we'd have no mysteries to solve. And what a boring world that would be! Some mysteries endure longer than others, though, and there's a definite air of lingering mystery about everything you're about to see in this video. Drones are helping us to make more archaeological discoveries than ever before, because they allow us to see from a perspective that we wouldn't otherwise be able to reach. It was drone footage that was responsible for the discovery of this ancient sunken longboat in Ireland's River Boyne in April 2021. This is a simple but durable type of watercraft made from the trunk of a single hollowed-out tree. Its style is consistent with some of the earliest waterborne vessels ever made by human hands. They first appeared in Ireland during the Neolithic era, but were still made and used as recently as medieval times. The River Boyne has proven to be a rich hunting ground for vessels of this type, with 12 found in the past decade. Radiocarbon dating later proved this particular longboat to be 5,000 years old. The drone pilot responsible for the discovery was actually looking for a dolphin that's been repeatedly sighted in the area in recent years. He didn't find the dolphin, but he at least found a precious piece of ancient Irish history. Speaking of discoveries made underwater, our next discovery story is that of 4 Roman Navy battering rams. They were found in August 2021 and are thought to be relics of the Punic War that happened in the year 241 BCE. The ancient weapons were found by a team of marine archaeologists close to Ustica Island, not far from Palermo in Italy. The ingenuity of the design is plain for all to see. Battering rams like these played a major role in ensuring that the Romans emerged victorious over the Carthaginians in the war. In fact, historians have speculated that the rams, known as Roman rostrums, were used in the Battle of the Agates. That was the war's final battle, and the moment of Rome's triumph. The Greek historian Polybius witnessed the battle, as did Diodorus of Sicily. Both men wrote similar accounts of the Roman fleet sinking more than 50 Carthaginian warships and capturing 70 more. There's a certain poetry in the fact that the Romans eventually defeated Carthage at sea, because in the earlier half of the war, the Carthaginians had such a naval advantage that the Romans were eventually forced to copy the designs of their ships. If the Carthaginians had thought to go a step further and add battering rams, the history books might look very different. It's difficult to think of anything that works better as a symbol of Australia than the boomerang. Sure, you might think of a kangaroo or the Sydney Opera House, but the boomerang would come to mind first for most people. The history of the boomerang in Australia goes back to a time long before the first Europeans were sent there in exile by the British government. To prove it, here's an 800-year-old boomerang that was discovered in a remote creek near Mornington, Victoria in February 2021. It was found by Jason Braley and his family, who were fishing the creek, when Jonathan says the boomerang caught his eye, almost as if it were glowing. It was most likely created by the Boon Wurrung, the Aboriginal Australians of the Kulin Nation in Victoria. It's not quite the oldest boomerang ever found in the country, but it's high up the list. Rather than being of the kind that would return to you if you threw it through the air, this boomerang is designed to stun or kill animals by being thrown directly at them. Boomerangs were first conceived as hunting tools, not toys. We're heading back to Ireland again now, but this time we're not looking at old boats. Instead, we're looking at an almost perfect set of 800-year-old Norman chainmail that was found there in August 2021. The chainmail must have been lost or discarded not long after Norman invaders arrived in County Wexford in the year 1172. The correct technical name for the chainmail is a hauberk, although it's thought that the Norman warriors who wore it called it a byrnie. It's armor plating for the upper body, but is far lighter and more flexible than plate armor. This hauberk was found inside a shed. The shed's owner said they'd found it a couple of years earlier but kept it in the shed and didn't tell anybody because they didn't realize that it might have historical value. They only realized that they might have something valuable on their hands after watching a documentary about the Normans on television. The chainmail is now undergoing a careful restoration process, but will eventually be made available for public display. The museum it will be exhibited at hasn't yet been chosen. It's a long way from Ireland to Colombia, but that's where we're going for our next find. It's a collection of 8 whole jars of gold, silver, and emeralds, and it was found near the Colombian capital of Bogotá in September 2021. It's been speculated that the area they were found in might be the foundations of an ancient temple. The Colombian media went into overdrive at the time of the discovery, trying to connect the treasure with the legend of El Dorado. But El Dorado is a myth, and these precious artifacts are very real. They were probably created and then buried by the Muisca, who lived in the Andean highlands from the 8th century to the 16th. They're the lesser known of the 4 ancient high societies of South America, the others being the Incas, the Mayas, and the Aztecs. While we'd put a high price on these items today, the Muisca considered them almost worthless. They were more interested in fabrics and salt than gold and jewels, and often traded their considerable gold resources with the cultures around them at a low rate of exchange. These jars might have been left as offerings to the gods they believed in. Finding a runestone in Sweden might not sound all that noteworthy when you consider the country's Viking past. But there's more to this story than there seems to be at first glance. While digging into the soil of Ystad in December 2020, Swedish archaeologists found a large runestone bearing a carving of a wolf-like creature known as a Fenrir in Norse mythology. It didn't take the experts long to realize that they'd found a lost stone from the Runestone monument. The beautiful monument was destroyed by an ignorant and uncaring landowner during the 18th century, and many of the stones it was made from were never seen again. Most historians feared the missing stones had been destroyed, and yet here this one is to prove them wrong. It seems that after the monument was destroyed, the runestone was used as a foundation stone for a bridge. It's the 4th of the 8 stones to be recovered, and will soon join the other 3 at the Kulturen Museum in Lund. The remaining 4 are still missing. It's thought they're unlikely ever to be found now, but the same would have been said about this one before it turned up. Buying a gift for a king of England must have been difficult in the 17th century. After all, the king already had everything he could ever want. In the case of King Henry VIII, a man of gluttonous tastes, he had far more than he could ever want. Perhaps that's why Emperor Maximilian of Rome panicked and gifted him this hideous horned helmet in 1511. There are some historical sources that suggest the emperor even designed the helmet himself, although not enough for us to be sure that he did. The grotesque helmet comes complete with a stubbly chin, a running nose, horns, and glasses. It came with a full suit of armor, which may have been equally bizarre to look at, but the armor is long gone. Why the Emperor of Rome would give the King of England such a thing is anybody's guess, but Henry liked it enough to keep it. Maybe it was a practical joke of some kind and would have been hilariously funny in the 16th century. Perhaps it was designed to mock one of the king's many enemies. We don't even know whether the king ever wore it, but we kinda hope he did. Many of you will know and enjoy the experience of eating a well-prepared, expertly aged piece of meat. But where would you draw the line when it comes to age? Would you, for example, eat a bison steak that was 36,000 years old? We're pretty sure none of you would. But let's see if we can change your minds. Back in 1979, the mummified remains of a steppe bison were found by a gold miner in Alaska, USA. The miner nicknamed his discovery Blue Babe, on account of the fact that its skin had turned blue because of the iron phosphate deposits it was buried in. Blue Babe belongs to a species of bison that no longer exists, but once spread across North America, Europe, and Central Asia. A full-sized steppe bison could stand 7 feet tall and weigh up to 2 tons. It was decided that Blue Babe would go on display in the University of Alaska's museum, and the team responsible for preparing the carcass for display celebrated the completion of their work by cutting away a piece of its neck, stewing it, and eating it. Apparently it was tough but edible and gave off a strong earthy aroma. Are any of you tempted by the thought now? No, us neither. Is the James Ossuary a genuine religious artifact or a hoax? Well, that's probably a question of faith. It's in a limestone box, and it's said to contain the remains of an Israelite named James, who passed away 2,000 years ago. The box comes with a Hebrew inscription, and when that inscription is translated into English, it reads, James, son of Joseph, brother of Jesus. This single inscription has been cited as direct evidence of the existence of both Joseph and Jesus, and therefore the historical accuracy of the entire New Testament. The big question is whether the inscription is as old as the rest of the artifact. Oded Golan, an Israeli antique dealer who brought the artifact to the attention of the world in 2002, was eventually put on trial for forgery related to the box. At the trial, scientists testified that the casket and the human remains inside it were 2,000 years old, but the inscription was not. Golan denied all accusations of wrongdoing and was found not guilty. He's still a free man today, and still insists that the James Ossuary is exactly what he claims it to be. The golden rhinoceros of Mapungumbwe is not what it appears to be. It's certainly a figurine of a rhinoceros, but it's not golden. It's actually made of wood, with a thin layer of gold sheeting wrapped around it to make it look more valuable than it actually is. The artifact is thought to be around 1,000 years old, and is so named because it was found in Mapungumbwe National Park in 1932. The archaeologists responsible for the discovery noted that it seemed to be a part of a small-scale royal burial. If so, that's a controversial finding. If the hillside site of the rhino was found at a royal grave, it implies the existence of an independent kingdom or fiefdom in this part of South Africa during the 11th century. That would be the oldest known example of a class-based society existing anywhere in the southern part of Africa that long ago, and contradicts the oft-told European narrative that South Africa was uncivilized before Dutch settlers arrived there in the 16th and 17th centuries. However, if there was a fiefdom here, there should be more direct evidence of it somewhere in the ground. Perhaps a further archaeological dig at that hillside would be a good place to start. There are a series of small islands off the coast of Northern Ireland. On 2 of them, White Island and Boa Island, you'll find a collection of rock carvings that have been baffling archaeologists and historians for years. They look like pagan gods, but appear to be covered in Christian symbols and might reflect a fusion between Christian and pagan beliefs among the people living on the islands centuries ago. The statues are known as the Janus Figures, because the largest of them on Boa Island has 2 heads, like the Roman god Janus, but it's a misleading name. Not all of the statues have 2 heads, and they were never designed to look like Janus anyway. The figures on White Island are even stranger than the ones on Boa Island, because it seems they were hidden within the walls of the island's 12th century church when it was first built. However, more recent examinations suggest that the figures were carved during the 9th century, and the church was built around them, which would have to be considered even weirder. The Boa Island statues are even older than that. Their origins and purposes remain unexplained. Was the might of ancient Egypt built on the back of the success of the Khopesh on the battlefield? That's the opinion of many of the military historians who've inspected the ancient blades at close quarters. Egyptian warriors of the Bronze Age carried the curved swords as standard issue. It's thought to be the oldest sword design in North Africa. Some of the enemies of the Egyptian army 3,500 years ago wouldn't have had swords of any kind, so it's no surprise that the Egyptian army slaughtered them on the battlefield. While the Khopesh might have been so important to Egypt that it eventually became a symbol of the country, It's not an Egyptian invention. Historical sources indicate that the Sumerians developed and used the khopesh about 1,000 years before the Egyptians came around to the idea. The Sumerian king Inatum of Lagash is depicted as carrying a khopesh on the stele of the vultures. Wherever the Egyptians got the idea and the design from, though, they used it more proficiently than anyone who came before them. Without it, they might never have been able to stave off the constant threat of invasion from the Sea Peoples.
Subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and enjoy watching new videos on my channel. Thanks for watching, and see you soon!